Hello, my name is Susan Winkelstein, and I'm a funeral director with Chicago Jewish Funerals. And thank you for your patience. We're about to begin the services for Mr. Richard D. Abelson. Officiating will be Rabbi Paul Cohn from Temple Jeremiah in Northfield.
Dear friends, we gather this morning to pay a lasting tribute of love to the life of Richard Dodge Abelson, who was passed on into eternity. As I was speaking with the family, I was drawn to the words of the poet Merritt Malloy, who wrote a poem called Epitaph. And I think that it applies so beautifully to this memorial tribute to Richard, because family and connections, keeping everyone connected one to the other, the responsibility that he felt toward family is spoken of so beautifully in this poem. When I die, give what's left of me away to children and old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give to me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known and loved, and if you cannot give me away, at least let me live on your eyes and not on your mind. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands, by letting bodies touch bodies, and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid, ki minimi bal emot. I have set the eternal always before me. God is at my side, I shall not be moved. Therefore does my heart exult and my soul rejoice. My being is secure. For you will not abandon me to death, nor let your faithful one see destruction. You show me the path of life. Your presence brings fullness of joy. Enduring happiness is your gift. Death has taken our beloved Richard Abelson. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence there is lamentation. In their tears there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, and be with them. For Richard's love that united us in life and which death cannot sever. For his companionship that we shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of his heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. In this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures that brings us the ever-new message of God's nearness. It tells us of our kinship with the Creator, in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. Psalm 23, the Shepherd's Psalm. Adonai rohi lo echsar, inot esher bitzeni, al me menuchot yenaleni. Nafshi yeshovev yeshovev, Yancheni v'magle tzedek, Yancheni v'magle tzedek, Le'man shemo, Gam ki elech b'getz al mavet lo irara, Ki ata imadi, Shivtecha umishantecha ema yenachamuni. Aruch lefanai, shulchan neged tzorerai, dishanta v'shemen roshi, kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni, kol yemei chayai, kol yemei chayai, v'shavti bevet Adonai leorech yamim. Adonai rohi lo echsar, Adonai rohi lo echsar. In the pamphlet that many of you have, you'll find the English translation of the 23rd Psalm. I invite you to follow along with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In his sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, Yehi shem Adonai mevorach. God has given and God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. An ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief in the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us. Yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave, and that there is strength in faith. With Job, we say, Adonai natan, God, you have given. You gave us a loved one, Richard Abelson, who will not be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in his life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai lakach, God, you have taken away. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and your love, as we now say, Yehi shem Adonai mevorach. Blessed be the name of God, now and forever. Amen. I invite you to take these next few moments to call forward the cherished memories that you have of Richard's life, how his love touched each of your hearts in this moment of silent reflection. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight. Be acceptable in your sight. God, our rock and our Redeemer. God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. There is a favorite midrash of mine, a story that our rabbis of blessed memory tell of two very dear friends who were in the habit of taking long walks together. And on one such walk, they wound up at a harbor. looking out and watching the activity of the boats coming in and going out, the people working. And as they were standing at the railing together, they noticed a particular ship that was about to set sail, a cruise ship. And there was a lot of fanfare, people on the deck shouting and singing. There was a band playing, just as we've seen in all of those wonderful movies. And at the same time, there's another ship coming into port without any fanfare, no music, no singing. And one friend turns to the other and says, that's exactly the opposite of what should be happening. The ship that's about to set sail, we don't know what challenges it might face, what storms it might encounter, whether or not it will even safely make it to port again. But the cause for celebration, when a ship safely returns to port, that is the cause for celebration. And the rabbis continue, so it is with our lives. When a baby is born, there is much celebration, as of course there should be. But also at the end of a person's life, particularly a life that was so full, so well lived as it was for Richard, it is also an opportunity for us to celebrate. And so we continue this tribute of love with the words of Richard's family. We're going to hear first from his children, from Dennis and from Debbie, and then from the grandchildren, from Carly and Hillary, Stephanie, and Josh.
I want to thank everyone for attending this celebration of Dad's life. And let me just mute my speaker here. My father was a Life Scout. He was proud to earn enough merit badges to reach that special rank, which also happens to describe how Richard Abelson conducted his life. When Debbie and I were in high school, Dad used to drive from Glencoe practically every Sunday to pick up Grandma Ann in Hyde Park. Then after our family dinner together, he'd drive her home again. Dad stayed in touch with every member of the Cousins Club, including our far-flung relatives in Manchester and in London. He never failed to follow the exploits of his nieces and nephews, Nancy, Mindy, William, Michael, and Scott. In keeping with the scouting principles, the strongest swear word I ever had heard Dad use was nuts. Although he did once mangle the pronunciation of Fuddruckers repeatedly on our way to dinner one night, to the great amusement of my daughters who were then in grade school. I think Dad took a disciplined, scout-like approach to life because he was an engineer by trade. He received a degree from Purdue in engineering, where soon after graduating, he met Mom, by the way, and later attended the University of Chicago Night School to earn his MBA. As he would demonstrate when arranging suitcases to fit into the trunk of our car, Dad was good at tackling tasks in a systematic way, which no doubt explains how he rose to CEO of Miramont, a Fortune 500 company, and held executive positions with Sealy Mattress. He took his responsibility seriously, which is why he was named the executor for 3 family relatives' estates. When we lived in Greenville, South Carolina in the 60s, Dad served as president of the temple. I still have the engraved Kiddush cup he gifted me from the congregation at my bar mitzvah. For anyone who hasn't heard this famous story, Dad's middle name was Dodge. When Grandpa Al had to rush Grandma Ann to the hospital maternity ward, his Plymouth sedan wouldn't start, so he had to borrow his brother-in-law's Dodge. They didn't quite make it to the hospital. So that's where Richard Dodge Abelson was born on Cinco de Mayo, 1925, which may also explain why he went on to pursue a career in the automotive industry. In his later years, Dad took to interviewing, which would consist of asking every waitress, waiter, and store checkout person and bank teller where they were from. Then he would tell them what it was like growing up in his Hyde Park days. In short, Richard Abelson wasn't a Life Scout, he was an Eagle Scout. Speaking for his 4 great-grandkids, and all the Brohman, Novak, and Teven clan, he will sorely be missed.
Well, okay, that's fine. While I was growing up, I was always impressed by how much my dad made family and our happiness his top priority. He always let me know that I was special, calling me his favorite daughter, even though I was his only daughter. During my adult years, my dad said to me every time he saw me, "Have I told you how proud I am of you?" Making me feel very valued. My dad taught me how to be successful in business and in life, including teaching me how to read real roadmaps. In those days, neither of us could have imagined that we would get step-by-step directions from a voice coming from a car, which sometimes ended us up in a totally wrong place. He was a shining example of a rare, successful businessman who was also compassionate and concerned. He was a pioneer in racial equality in the 1960s when we lived in South Carolina. At his business, removing segregated facilities, and in his social life, easing in the admittance of Black community members into private clubs. I cannot
She cannot imagine having a better role model than her dad. She doesn't know if she ever told her dad how proud of him she was. Hopefully he is listening now. Last night, I was watching TV and I saw a commercial with some little kids looking on their phones. And obviously they were engaging in social media. And in thinking about Richard, I said to myself, wow, with the way he could communicate to others, Richard would have been the superstar of all superstars in social media. And then I said to myself, well, maybe he wouldn't, because Richard did it the old-fashioned way. He did it face-to-face, heart-to-heart, in person. I think all of us who ever had the opportunity to get to know Richard will realize how wonderful it was to engage in the fantastic art of communication and conversation with him. He will be sorely missed by all of us.
When we met with the rabbi, he asked what lessons my grandfather had taught us, either by word or by deed. And though I have thought about him, it seems exclusively for the past few days, I had not yet considered this specifically. And it felt really good to think about him in that way, to think about how much of him I can hold on to and hold on to still. He wasn't a lecturer. The teachings by word came in the form of stories. Stories about when he was a little girl, which made me laugh every single time, or about when he was an engineer, which I thought for sure must have involved a train, or stories about being made to wear the same pair of corduroy pants every day at Purdue, meeting his bride, and then being chased by a turkey when he went to meet her family. Stories about my dad and my aunt being perfect little angels who only sometimes commandeered the family car. He shared these stories only with his very favorite neighbors or pharmacists or mechanic or grandchildren's friends. And when we went out for dinner, he not only wanted to hear the specials that night, but where the server grew up and how many siblings she had and if she liked the Cubs or the White Sox. He kept his weight down by spending our family dinners at Northmore, not by eating, but by saying about 1,000 quick hellos. And what he taught me by his word and his deed was to ask questions, and that people like to tell their stories. He called me his #1 grandchild, which was true. but it also made me feel like it. He and my grandmother came to Prentice the day after their first great-grandchild was born, just like he and my grandmother had brought me to visit a 4-day-old Hillary in a family favorite home video. His words and deeds taught me to work hard in school, in occupation, and in family. After all, if we didn't have each other, where would our stories come from? I hope that we have many more chances to tell his stories, and in doing so, allow his memory to bless us all.
Richard Dodge Abelson came into this world in a neighbor's Dodge car. He took such pride in his ahead of the times middle name. Though his adult self was obedient beyond belief and a whiz at engineering and math, he loved telling stories of his earlier days before he was able to showcase his abilities. His favorite story that he actually retold to me just a few weeks ago was when a visitor came to his kindergarten class. His teacher asked him to show her where the children who misbehaved were sent, and he proceeded to lead the visitor to the coat closet. In his own words, "After about 20 minutes, I realized no one was coming back for me." He was sent home with a note pinned to his shirt, politely inviting him not to return to school the next day. His younger self likely made my great-grandparents a bit crazy, but he certainly made up for all of that in spades just decades later. I knew my grandfather as the quiet constant. He was conservative, even-keeled, gentle, and kind. He loved flashlights, boxes, and maps. As my grandma always says, he never met a flashlight or a box he didn't like. He used a shoehorn each time he put on his shoes. He wore old-fashioned caps and drove with 2 feet because, as he said, that's how he was taught. He was ever loyal to Purdue and Drew Brees. He loved wheat thins, marshmallows, chamomile tea, lemon drops, and chewing gum. Grandfather's moral compass pointed straight up. He played by the rules and always, always followed the law of the land. He would park and repark his car over and over again until he was able to align it perfectly in its space. He followed his doctor's orders to a T, so much so that he lost too much weight after being told to watch his diet and needed to add salt back into his food after he removed it so completely that his blood pressure dropped too low. He interviewed everyone he met. In the summer, the waitstaff at Northmore always traveled from abroad to work here. Without question, he asked each and every one of them about his or her heritage, waiting for someone to say they were from England, so he could proudly state, the Abelsons have family in Manchester. A true people person, he spoke like this with everyone he came into contact: the checkout person at the grocery store, the tailor at the cleaners, the pharmacist at Parkway Drugs. He always sought out these connections, wanting to better understand people, and his kind, friendly way were absolutely infectious. Grandfather actually told us that we needed to stop thanking him for various outings and dinners. He said, "The only thing I want you to say is that you had a great time." My grandfather cared deeply about his family's happiness, health, and safety. At 10 years old, I developed a fear of fire. I worried night and day about what would happen if my room and house became engulfed in flames. Weineke's, a landmark store in Glencoe, had just begun its going out of business sale. My grandfather, in an effort to quell my fears, picked up a fire escape ladder for me, advising that it be kept in my bedroom closet, just in case. This gesture provided such comfort to my 10-year-old anxiety-ridden self. Grandfather came to my rescue more than once when I was locked out of my childhood home, and he also saved me from boredom in France when my 15-year-old self was far too preoccupied and complaining of hurt feet to walk the halls of the Louvre. He sat with me for hours while my grandmother and sister toured the museum. Grandpa would drop off de-icing mechanisms for me, just in case the temperatures fell so low that my car door handles froze, as well as kitty litter on the offset chance. On the offset chance I found myself on a sheet of ice. He said it would help to melt it. He gave me small shovels that would telescope out so I could keep them in my trunk should I ever be stuck in a snowstorm. And to this day, I still use the rechargeable flashlight he advised me to keep plugged in at all times, just in case the power goes out. He was always practical, logical, methodical, and yet no one chuckled more loudly while watching slapstick comedy than he. My devoted grandfather attended every recital, music, and dance show I was in. The ever jokester he was, he would first ask, "Wait, tell me again the date of your show," to which I replied with the answer. He would say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I think I'm going to be out of town that night." But sure enough, he showed up each and every time. He and my grandmother drove 12 hours round trip each and every summer to Eagle River, Wisconsin, just to visit my sister and me at sleepover camp. Even though I assume he did want to see us, I also knew the great pleasure he took in mapping out, highlighting, and reviewing all of the various permutations of routes he could take to get to upstate Wisconsin. But no one could believe my grandparents were coming, as only parents usually made the trek. I felt so special. He always made me feel that way. Years later, I remember relishing in that same emotion when my grandparents drove up to Ann Arbor for my college graduation. He never missed the important moments in my life. Likewise, he has been by my sister and my family's side watching his great-grandchildren grow. He traveled with Graham downtown to the city the day after 3 of his 4 great-grandbabies were born. He loved our children just as much as he loved us, and never missed the chance to say, "Give me 5" to them, counting each and every tap of their little hands on his palm. He had a kinship with my older son, Oliver, who seems to have a lot in common with my grandfather's younger self. It must run in the family. 2 weeks ago, I told my grandf that Oliver was having trouble with his penmanship, but was multiplying and dividing with total ease. His response? "That's my boy." Every time we spoke on the phone, he would end the call by saying to go take care of my boys, and that he and grandmother send us all their love. Rather than imparting deep wisdom when we were together or verbally sharing life's great lessons, he let me share my accomplishments. He didn't have to teach me to work hard, because when I did, his praise reinforced this behavior. In my teens, I gushed to him about my grades. In my 20s, it was successful projects at work, and more recently, parental crises I was able to overcome. His response was always the same. "You know what? You're all right, kid." These few words were all I ever needed to feel his pride and his love. My grandfather was 95, lived a beautiful, long life, which currently doesn't even feel like it was long enough. I will miss him always. Gramp, you know what? You're all right.
My my grandpa always made sure to spread his love equally amongst his family, never showing favoritism. As I was his 3rd oldest granddaughter, he always called me his number 3 favorite granddaughter, a title which I wore like a badge of honor. While I was growing up, my grandparents lived a very short distance away from our house, so I usually saw them at least once a week. I feel so lucky that I was able to see them so often and develop my own close bond with them. My grandpa guided and supported me in everything I did, and he shaped me into the person I am today. He taught me the joy and healing power of laughter, to treat those around you like family, and to always carry an emergency $50 bill. I will always admire his knack for making friends and the way he made sure everyone around him felt welcome. Grandpa, thank you for all that you've done for me and my family, all the love that you've given us. I miss you so much.
I was fortunate enough to have been able to see my grandpa frequently over the past several years, fixing his computer or TV on a weekly basis. Sometimes it would be something simple as the printer needed to be plugged back in, since he always liked to turn it off from the back and might have knocked the cable out. But it was in those moments that we bonded, him trying to teach me about the stock market, me veering off the subject to sports. He would always tell me about his running bet with my father, where they would owe each other $5 based on the winner of any Purdue versus Illinois contest, but my dad would never collect. We were always in agreement about the White Sox. My grandpa's sense of humor and drive to be a good person had a great impact on me. We were both life scouts and so enjoyed helping other people when we can. My grandpa always knew how to bring a smile to my face. I miss him very much.
Thank you for each of you for those heartfelt and beautiful words. Dennis and Debbie, Carly, Hillary, Stephanie, and Josh. What I noticed, and I'm sure what everybody noticed, was the running threads through each of the stories that reinforced the consistency, the precision with which Richard lived his life, and how he, in his own way, taught these lessons to each and every member of his family. This week, in fact, yesterday, we began a new Hebrew month, the month of Kislev, the month in which we celebrate the festival of Hanukkah, the festival of light. The new month, or the new moon, is ironically titled because it is at this point when there is no moon apparent in the sky. The skies at the beginning of the month are quite dark indeed. A new moon actually means no moon. Yet it is in the dark that we can see the light most clearly. In the darkness of this loss, as you heard in these beautiful words that were shared, we see Richard's light. As you know, he graduated from Purdue University with an engineering degree. And he met Donna coming back to Purdue after graduation at homecoming. He was fixed up with Donna by a friend, and that friend, the two couples actually wound up getting married. And Donna was reminded that one of the things that first attracted her to Richard was how well he danced. He was, of course, quite handsome, and that had an impact as well. And most certainly it was his spirit that allowed them to celebrate and to share 72 years of marriage to one another. Richard was born, as you heard, some 95 years ago, the second of two boys born to Albert and Anne. His brother Jerry passed away many, many years ago. And true to his nature, Richard stepped in to help his sister-in-law with their children, always maintaining a strong connection for which they are all very grateful. Just one example of his dedication and the responsibility he felt to keep connected with family, bringing light out of the darkness. He learned a strong work ethic from an early age, working in his parents' corset shop, helping keep stock. He was, as you heard, a Boy Scout and achieved the title of Life Scout. And though he grew up very much a rule follower, as you heard, and became very dutiful, he did manage, and I'd never heard of this before, of actually getting kicked out of kindergarten. A knee injury during a high school football game made him ineligible for the draft, and he was able, therefore, to attend Purdue and receive his degree. He became a lifelong Purdue fan, making these side bets for $5 against family who had ties to other universities. He was a proud alum, and of course there was that added measure of value and of connection in his meeting his beloved Donna there. Richard felt so blessed, so lucky to have Donna in his life, one of the best decisions he said that he ever made, and to have the wonderful family that they created together. He said, "I hit the jackpot." Continued to bring light into the world as his family grew and grew. Dennis and his Barbara, Deborah and her Michael, of course, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren. Richard's work carried him and the family to Fort Wayne, and then to Fort Wayne, Indiana, then to Greensville, South Carolina, and back to Chicago, and then truly all over the world. He was a die-hard White Sox fan, a South Sider through and through, and would turn many of these interviews, these conversations, back to his roots. Richard was focused, he was organized, he had folders for everything, he engineered packing a suitcase, he loved planning trips. He and Donna, each in their own way, fought segregation, modeled social justice, albeit, I understand, from different political positions. It was said of him, and I think Debbie shared this as well, that he was a shining example that you can succeed in business and be a mensch. They are not mutually exclusive. He was able to continue to bring light into our world. Well, at night, he saw the light of education. He was able to continue to work and to receive a master's in business administration from the University of Chicago. He eased into retirement and being a grandfather. Became so much more relaxed and relished time with his family. Connection with family was essential to Richard, whether it was the Cousins Club or keeping in touch with the Manchester Abelsons, other family who lived overseas. He kept up with everyone, bringing the light of this connection. He had a strong connection to Judaism. He was one of the first to become bar mitzvah at Temple Isaiah Israel on the south side. He led the family Seder. As you heard, he was president of the congregation in Greenville, while Donna was president of the sisterhood. They joined North Shore Congregation Israel when they moved back to the area and settled in Glencoe. Settling into Glencoe, they joined Northmore. Richard enjoyed the social activities there. He enjoyed playing golf and tennis. Tennis was his game, and one year he won the club championship. Even, and I understand he was matched with somebody who wasn't quite so good at tennis. He said, "You just stand at the net and wave your arms and I'll take care of the rest." He enjoyed the family trips to their home in Palm Desert and to Wisconsin as well. He taught life lessons, bringing light into each of his family members' life. He would say, if you do not have anything nice to say, don't say it. And he never had a negative thing to say about anyone. No one could recall him losing his temper. He tried to see the humor in a situation. He was a positive person who taught work hard and act with integrity. Be honest. In this new month of Kislev, as we welcome the new moon and look forward to our celebration of Hanukkah, the festival of light, we celebrate the light that was and is Richard Dodge Abelson, a devoted son, brother, husband, father, grandfather, great-grandfather, uncle, and friend. May his memory always be for a blessing. And to this let us say, Amen. As I now share the memorial prayer, El Malei Rachamim, I invite you to please rise. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hamitzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, Im Kedoshim Utehorim, Kezohar Harakia Masirim, Et Nishmat Re'enu, Shehalach Le'olamo, Bal HaRachamim, Yastireu B'Seter Kenafav Le'olamim, Vayitzror B'Tzor HaChaim, Et Nishmato, Adonai Hu Nachalato, V'yanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkavo, V'nomar, Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Richard Dodge Abelson, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and together we say, Amen. The dust returns to the earth as it was. The spirit returns to God who gave it. Receive in mercy, O God, the soul of our departed Richard Abelson. Grant him that everlasting peace which you have prepared for us in the world to come. Though no human eye has seen, nor ear has heard, nor mind has grasped it, still is our sure inheritance and our everlasting portion. O God, help us to understand that grief and love go hand in hand, that the pain which loss inflicts is the measure of a love that is stronger than death. Though we cry in the anguish of our hearts, may we be like children who know that their parent is near and who cling unafraid to the trusted hand. In this spirit, O God, do we commit all that is precious to us to your keeping, as we repeat words hallowed by the generations, the words of the Kaddish. Again, for those of you who have the pamphlet, the Kaddish is printed there as well. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma divra chirute v'amlich malchute, v'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, v'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru amin. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach leolam olmei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shmei dekudsha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata. Damiran bi'alma v'imru amin. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amin. Oseh shalom b'imromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amin. May God grant peace to all who mourn the passing of Richard Abelson and bring comfort to all who are bereaved among us. And together we say, Amen.
This does conclude the service, and I want to mention that to the friends and the extended family of Mr. Abelson, I encourage you to share your personal condolences and stories at the Chicago Jewish Funerals website or legacy.com. Thank you.